Hello and welcome to News Central Television. I am Lekon Onobanjo. Here are the stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin the news with updates from the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, where Iran says it will not hesitate to respond in an event of U.S. attacks on its territory after the White House declined to say whether strikes on Iran were ruled out. White House National Secretary Advisor Jake Sullivan said on Sunday that the U.S. will press on with its retaliation against Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria. According to Sullivan, he said, and I quote, "If Iran chooses to respond directly to the United States, they would be met with a swift and forceful response." End of quote. Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesman Nassar Kanani hit back on Monday saying, and I quote, "The Islamic Republic has shown that it has always reacted decisively to any threats to its security, territorial integrity and sovereignty." End of quote.
نقض حاکمیت و تمامیت ارضی کشورهای منطقه‌ای از جمله سوریه، عراق و یمن تلاشی ناشیانه برای انحراف اذهان عمومی و اذهان جامعه بین‌المللی از نقطه کانونی بحران یعنی فلسطین، جمهوری اسلامی ایران به دنبال تشدید تنش و بحران در منطقه نیست. از تنش و بحران هیچگاه حمایت نکرده، اما در این حال جمهوری اسلامی ایران نشان داده که همواره با هر گونه تهدیدی علیه امنیت، علیه حاکمیت، علیه تمامیت ارضی جمهوری اسلامی ایران.
Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says an Israeli victory against Hamas in Gaza will deal a fatal blow to the Palestinian militants and other Iran-backed groups in the region. In an address to army commanders, Netanyahu described Hezbollah, the Houthis and Hamas as Iran's axis of evil.
זה תמצית המדיניות שלנו, ניצחון מוחלט על החמאס. עכשיו, הניצחון המוחלט הוא חיוני משום שהוא מבטיח את ביטחון ישראל. ניצחון מוחלט זה הדרך היחידה שבה נוכל להבטיח עוד הסכמי שלום היסטוריים שעומדים בפתח, וניצחון מוחלט ינחית את המכה האנושה על ציר הרשע של איראן, חיזבאללה, חות'ים וכמובן החמאס.
We also tell you that Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh says the Rafah border is an Egyptian-Palestinian affair after claiming that Israel is trying to move the Rafah crossing to another location. Shtayyeh, during a cabinet meeting in Ramallah, said Palestine had an agreement with the European police since the 2005 deal to manage the crossing, adding that it will be reopened if Israel closes it. He called on the UN Security Council and its members to work to stop the genocide and to adopt calls for an immediate halt to the aggression. In the meantime, French Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné says under no circumstance can there be a forced expulsion of Palestinians either from Gaza or from the West Bank. Séjourné was speaking at the end of a meeting in Jerusalem with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The head of French diplomacy is on a tour of the Middle East to try to secure a ceasefire in the fighting between Israel and the Palestinian movement Hamas in the Gaza Strip.
Il ne peut y avoir en aucun cas de déplacement forcé de Palestiniens, ni en dehors de Gaza, ni en dehors de la Cisjordanie. L'avenir de la bande de Gaza est indissociable de celui de la Cisjordanie. Nous devons préparer cet avenir en soutenant l'autorité palestinienne. Celle-ci doit se renouveler et se redéployer dès que possible dans la bande de Gaza. Je le répète, Gaza est une terre palestinienne. Tout cela sera possible si et seulement si le conflit israélo-palestinien trouve un règlement politique global avec deux États vivant en paix côte à côte, si et seulement si le processus de paix reprend sans attendre. C'est indispensable et c'est urgent. Sans solution politique, pas de paix juste et durable au Proche-Orient. C'est notre position et c'est notre analyse de la situation.
Let's also tell you that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in the Middle East for another crisis tour in a bid to secure a new truce in the Israel-Hamas war as southern Gaza saw no let-up in fighting. The top U.S. diplomat's plane touched down in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, the first stop on his fifth tour of the Middle East since the October 7 attacks by Hamas, which prompted massive Israeli retaliation. He is also expected to visit Israel, Egypt, and Qatar. Ahead of the trip, he stressed the need for urgently addressing humanitarian needs in Gaza after aid groups have repeatedly sounded the alarm over the devastating impact on the besieged territory of nearly 4 months of war. Away from that, King Charles has been diagnosed with a form of cancer. Buckingham Palace says it is not prostate cancer, what was discovered during this recent treatment for an enlarged prostate. The type of cancer has not been revealed, but according to a palace statement, the king began regular treatment on Monday. Buckingham Palace says the king remains wholly positive about his treatment and looks forward to returning to full public duty as soon as possible. He will postpone his public engagement, and it is expected other senior royals will help to stand in for him during his treatment. Joining us now to give more insight at this development is our international correspondent, Afua Hagan. Afua Hagan, thank you so much for joining us. Now, bring us up to speed with this latest information on the King's health from the palace.
Well, this is a statement that was revealed just about 6 p.m. UK time that King Charles III has been diagnosed with a form of cancer. Like you so rightly said, it's not prostate cancer. He was having treatment for an enlarged prostate last week, but the palace saying that in fact this is not prostate cancer, that during that diagnosis this particular form of cancer was found. Now, it's said that he will be continuing his constitutional function and still will be getting paperwork at home. It's thought that he was keen to talk about this particular diagnosis because he works with quite a lot of cancer-related charities and admires the work that they do. So yes, a diagnosis of cancer for King Charles III. He started treatment this morning in London and is resting at home this evening.
Well, Afua, since King Charles's ascension to the throne, the monarchy has been open about the health of members of the royal family. So what would you say brought about this change in disposition when it comes to communicating with the public?
You're absolutely right. There has been a real change of tact over this past month when we've been talking about the health of the royals, whether it's the Princess of Wales having abdominal surgery or King Charles III with his first health issue, which was that enlarged prostate. I think it's probably learning lessons from what's happened in the past with other members of the family who have talked about their mental health issues, whether it be in books or interviews, and they've decided to get ahead of the curve and let people know the information that they want instead of having people digging for it. You know, the monarchy has long been under fire for a lot of things, but secrecy has been one of them. And I think that they wanted to try, like I said, and get ahead of the curve and tell people what they thought they needed to know.
Do you think that would be enough to allay the fears of citizens, most especially now that public engagements will be suspended and senior officials probably be standing in gap for him? Do you think they will be satisfied with this?
Well, it has been a turbulent period for the royal family, most certainly. You had 3 out of 4 of the most senior royals out of action because of health issues. The Princess of Wales, the Prince of Wales to support her, and King Charles III. Now, he was already supposed to be out of action for a while because of his enlarged prostate. He's now going to probably be out of action for a lot longer. And I think people will be concerned. You know, when King Charles ascended to the throne after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, it was during a turbulent time politically. 10 Downing Street was like a revolving door. We had new prime ministers in there almost every week. But the monarchy wanted to be seen as something that was sure and stable. And the death of Queen Elizabeth kind of rocked that boat. But King Charles III wanted to come in and be that stable monarch but he's had his family kind of undermining him in a way, in the sense of Prince Andrew and all the troubles that he has had. And of course, you've had revelations from Prince Harry in the form of a book and a documentary, and the royal family haven't liked that. Now with these health issues, the turbulence continues. It's been quite a start for the royal family this year. So this health diagnosis only adds to those turbulent times.
Let's now talk about the Israel-Hamas war that has been on the front burner at the global stage. I shared the story earlier about the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, starting a tour now, looking at how to bring about peace and stability among the warring parties. So can you bring us updates or tell us about most especially the talks from some quarters as regards the deal to release hostages and probably pause the fighting? Do you think that could suffice at this point?
And that's a huge thing on people's minds, isn't it? What is happening to these hostages? And a deal to secure the release of the hostages has to be paramount and has to be central to this ongoing conflict. Now, Anthony Blinken, when he is in the country, that will be one of the things that he is absolutely 100% hot on, is trying to get a deal every day. So he says that he's in conversation with the Israelis every day on a number of different humanitarian areas and trying to make progress. He's trying to get these breakthroughs on these one or two things. And these in-person visits, they're doing something, but they're not doing as much as they can. So a senior State Department official said it's nigh on impossible to predict when there'll be a breakthrough in the talks to release the hostages. And he said that he doesn't actually know if it's something that's in the ball, if the ball is in the court of Hamas right now. And that means to say that when it comes to the hostages, we don't actually know if Hamas have all the hostages, if they know where all the hostages are. When they were taken, a lot of them were farmed out to other groups that are sympathetic with the cause of Hamas, whether it's Palestinian Jihad, whether it's Hezbollah or any other of the groups that operate in that area and are sympathetic to the cause of Hamas. Remember, you have hundreds and hundreds of miles of tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip and in Palestine where these hostages are being held. So the fact that we haven't got a breakthrough when it comes to the release of hostages could be because Hamas simply do not know where they all are. So therefore, they cannot offer them up as collateral.
So in the midst of this obstinacy on the part of Israel and Hamas and alliances and diplomatic relationships with the Middle East, is there a possibility that Blinken might be able to prevent a wider conflict that is said to be brewing right now?
The only way that you can really prevent a wider conflict happening is to dial down on the rhetoric. Remember that in this region, you have Houthi rebels also being attacked for their actions in the Red Sea. You have the US and the UK bombing Syria and Yemen as well. All these other factions happening within this region. Unless there is a cessation of all the military operations, and that's from the part of everyone, Hamas, Houthi rebels, the UK, the US, any other foreign actors involved, that's the only way that you're going to stop an escalation into a wider conflict. If we're really honest, we are already there. We are. The minute that the UK and the US started bombing other actors that were part of this wider stage, so to speak, we already are in an escalated conflict. Now, these talks in Saudi Arabia, and he's going around other countries in the region, they might dial down the rhetoric for a few hours or a few days. But remember, always on the back burner is the US and the UK's plan to continue bombing countries that they feel are not on their side. The time for escalation has come and gone.
Well, it's quite interesting because not everybody knows when the rhetorics will die down. Right now, we're talking about hostages, accounting for the number of people that have been taken hostage. And now, on the other side, the issue of the allegation against the UNRWA that has led to the cutting of aid to those who need them. What do you think Anthony Blinken should be doing at this time to increase aid to Gaza?
Well, the cutting of funding to UN RWA has been catastrophic for Gaza. It has meant that millions of people there are dying without food, without proper infrastructure that the UN RWA provided for that region. And it's absolutely fundamental that more aid needs to be increased. And this is not just about aid being given to the country, but aid being able to get into the country in the first place. Whether that is getting in via Red Sea crossings or whether that is it not being stolen by Hamas, by Hezbollah, by other rebels in the region. Now, when it comes to that, without really addressing what has happened with the UN agency, and there are some countries that are up their funding. Spain has upped their funding. You know, there's other countries that are still donating to the UN agency, but without really addressing what's happened there and without countries investigating properly, seeing if those staff members who they allege were involved in the October 7th attack, with them being sacked, with the rest of the agency being gone through meticulously and then being restarted so it can do its good work. Without that potentially happening, you'll never have that level of aid or infrastructure back in Palestine and back in Gaza where it's so desperately needed. So it's key that what has happened with the UN agency is sorted as soon as humanly possible.
Dicey situation, I must say there. Afua, again, thank you so much for helping us understand this better. We continue the news with another conflict, but this time in Europe, where Russian shelling of the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson killed 4 people and injured 1 other person on Monday. Since being recaptured by Ukrainian forces in November 2022, Kherson has faced near continuous Russian bombardment. According to the head of the Kherson City Military Administration, Roman Nchokro, among the dead were 2 men aged 45 and 50 who were in a car, a woman on the street and a 60-year-old man in the city center. The city lies on the western shores of Dnipro River, the de facto front line between Ukrainian and Russian forces in the south of the country. Last week, 2 French nationals were killed and 3 other foreigners wounded by a strike in Berislav, a town near Kherson. Let's also tell you that Georgian authorities say they have thwarted plans coordinated by a Ukrainian citizen to smuggle several explosive devices from Ukraine to Russia via Georgia. The Georgian Security Service said 6 devices, which contained 14 kilograms of C4 and a plastic explosive substance, were brought to Georgia on January 19 from the Ukrainian city of Odessa via Romania, Bulgaria and Turkey on a minivan belonging to a Ukrainian national. According to a statement by the authorities, a Ukrainian national of Georgian origin, Andrei Sharashidze, coordinated the plan.
ნივთიერება უკრაინის ქალაქ ოდესიდან რუმინეთის, ბულგარეთის და თურქეთის გავლით მიმდინარე წლის 19 იანვარს საქართველოში შემოიტანეს საკონტროლო გამშვები პუნქტით სარფი უკრაინის მოქალაქის მფლობელობაში არსებული მინივენის ტიპის ავტომობილით და იგეგმებოდა დადგენილია რომ ასაფეთქებელი მოწყობილობები სამხედრო წარმოების პლასტიკურ ასაფეთქებელ ნივთიერება C4-ს შეიცავს, რომლის მოქმედებაში მოყვანა შესაძლებელია ელექტროდეტონატორის და სპეციალური ტაიმერის საშუალებით. ასაფეთქებელი ნივთიერების საერთო წონა 14 კილოგრამს აღწევს. კონტეინერებში ასევე მოთავსებული იყო 6 ერთეული დეტონატორი და 6 ერთეული სპეციალური გასაღები. ასაფეთქებელი მოწყობილობის 6-ვე ინდივიდუალურ ყუთში დამონტაჟებული იყო მოქმედებაში მომყვანი ამდენივე ელექტრონული ტაიმერი, რომელშიც პროგრამულად უკვე ჩაწერილი იყო მოქმედებაში მოსაყვანი დრო.
We now head to America, where millions of people faced dangerous flooding on Monday in California after a storm brought record rains and gusty winds, leaving at least 1 person dead. The U.S. National Weather Service warned of life-threatening flash flooding caused by excessive rain, especially in the southern part of the state, as a so-called atmospheric river came ashore from the Pacific Ocean. Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency for 8 counties in Southern California. Police in the city of Yuba, near Sacramento in Northern California, said a man was killed when one of the state's iconic redwood trees fell on him in his backyard.
You know, we've been coming down here whenever there's big storms. My husband is with Cadres, so he always is watching out for weather alerts, and I come down here just because I find it fascinating to see how much water pours through the rivers during these storms.
In South America, Chile, for the third day, is fighting the deadliest forest fires in its recent history, with several points burning in the Valparaiso region, where at least 112 deaths have been recorded and more than 100 people missing in overpopulated areas devastated by the flames. In the city of Vina del Mar, northwest of Santiago and one of the most affected areas, the survivors find themselves without shelter or neighbors among streets full of burned rubble, on hills heavily populated by middle-class families and others by settlements. The highest authorities of the Valparaiso region in the center of the country have requested that the work of the investigation of deaths be accelerated, given the high number of people reported to the police as missing. In sports, former Brazilian football star Dani Alves went on trial on Monday in Barcelona, accused of raping a woman in a local nightclub in 2022. Prosecutors are demanding a 9-year prison sentence, followed by 10 years of conditional liberty, where he would remain under supervision. They are also asking that he pays 150,000 euros in compensation to the woman. The 40-year-old former Barcelona, Juventus and Paris Saint-Germain defender has been held on remand since his arrest in January 2023. The three-time Champions League winner has said they had consensual sex after initially denying knowing the woman during a television interview. And that's all at this hour. Don't forget to send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen. You can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekon Onobanjo.